Hi. So the topic I decided to write about for my essay was motivation. I felt like there was a lot of creative avenues I could take with it. I do have my questions here on the sticky note I will be referring to as I talk about it. So first of all, I have a intro paragraph at the top of my essay that briefly describes what I'm going to talk about, of course. And then I dive right into my first question for my second paragraph. My first question was, are there negative repercussions to using rewards for motivation? I personally picked this because I wanted to know the answer. So when I did my research on it, I first wanted to address educational psychology's take on it. And I did find that yes, there are negative repercussions. If a student is already motivated to do an activity, you should not reward them. I have this quote right here that expresses this. Um, so you shouldn't use rewards if the students are already motivated because it's kind of like beating a dead horse. And I found an article for my outside research that basically says the exact same thing, which was interesting. And he used saturation as like his word to express it because you are doing something um, that didn't really necessarily need to be done. So I thought this was interesting that it basically directly supported it. I go in talking about why there are other negative aspects of rewards and like why it would be. I continue to talk about that in this next paragraph. And then I decided to tie it in with what Doug Lemvo would say about it. And I actually was able to find a similar thing, but he kind of has a different take on it. He kind of talks about a strategy where if you reset directional phrase, you can get the results you want without motivation. So it was able to connect to it still, which was super cool. And he used an example of how pencils down and eyes on me was exchanged for eyes on me. And he was able to get the results he wanted to without having to apply any sort of reward to it. So that's how I was able to connect to Teach Like a Champion and that strategy. And then the next question I had was how does understanding internal self motivation affect teaching, and how does it connect to student teacher relations? This is kind of two questions, but I felt like they did interlock with each other. So I kind of rolled it into one. So the first thing that I have is there's different examples in the educational psychology book on there's a mastery goal example, and there is also one for failure avoidance goal and performance. Well, there's two slightly different ones. One is this one's a failure avoidance goal, and then this one is performance goal up here. So there's like kind of an example provided for what those look like. And then I take that information and I connect it to Teach Like a Champion because there is a strategy called tracking, not watching. And that in particular talks about understanding students, understanding their progress, watching their progress, why it's important. And I feel like this connects to understanding a student's like internal psychology and knowing their motivations because this also connects to like why it's important and how it interlocks with each other. And then from there, I actually talk about relations between students and teachers. So I bring that in, and I have outside research for that too. And I have both educational psychology quotes as well as Doug Lemvo quotes I use to support relationships. And the Kirby Hall schools is what I use for outside research. So they are very firm with doing teacher and student relations, why it's important. I have some quotes here how their attitudes improve towards learning in general, which was really cool. And like why they have that motivation to learn better because of this connection. And it's like to please the teacher, and that's included there as well. Uh, and then I have positive experiences as a form of motivation. I take Seifert's quote of why you should be a teacher and what he sees as the joy in that. And I feel like that's important because as a future teacher, you need to think about those things. That way you can reflect those positive thoughts from yourself and radiate it into your classroom. And then to tie into that, I found the joy factor strategy from Doug Lemvo, applied it into there. And then my support for that is there is a Harvard study actually that shows that there is a positive correlation between students being happy and their academic achievement growing. So this was very cool because later in the research, it says right here that their happiness directly correlates with student teacher relations. So it was super cool that my one question actually tied into this one as well. And then I just have a quick little summary that wraps everything up. So thank you.